Right. All right, I'm gonna hit go live. So going live in three, two, one. Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show flagship edition, as always, Sunday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm your host, Rob, and guest hosting with me tonight is Dr. Veckman. Good evening, Dr. Veckman. It's going good. You sound loud and clear. I'm coming deep beneath in the bowels of the Pinehills Palace, an underground bunker hidden from point of view. Daisy Max, the German Shepherds, are roaming the above grounds here. Pine Hills, next to the Institute for the Criminally Insane. I have to say, on satellite feed, you sound tremendous, sir. How are you this evening? Well, you are in Dairy World. I said you are in Dairy World. Well, the Midwest, yeah. I, uh, 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 Robert Redford is tonight's subject on the Extreme Movie Show. It's his birthday. Happy whatever 80 something birthday you are, Robert. We're going to talk a little bit about Robert Redford's movies, just a little bit about him as an actor, and really probably not even him specifically. We're going to take it to a higher, more extreme level, and just talk about what Robert Redford is as an acting person, what he means, because he's been around a long time. He's the type of person that emulates a lot of qualities that I think start off doing that, and he's probably one of the old guards that are definitely worth mentioning, whether you like him or his movies or not. So basically, we're trying to give him the extreme test and see if he passes on his birthday. So I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Every woman ever, from my mother's generation, sister's generation, we're talking going back to the 50s, 60s, whatever, loved Robert Redford. His all American good looks, his sideburns, his golden hair, his all American look, whatever the hell that means. It made me sick to my stomach as a kid going, I don't see it. What's the big deal about Robert Redford? When you first heard about Robert Redford, what did you think? And what was your initial impressions of him? Yes. Yes. Not quite tall enough. The thing about Robert Redford is, I remember this distinctly. I think he was in a movie called The Way They Were, and that's got the one singer in there, Barbara Streisand. And I remember walking in as a kid. My older sister, one of my older sisters, and my mother were watching this movie, and I just knew that they were going to watch it. Um, it was a very memorable night because my father was working. I was out playing on the streets. We had just ordered something that we're going to talk about on the next edition of Snacking It, Charles chips, a specialty chip item. They had bought them. We tasted them. They were greasy. They were fat. It just was a thing back in the day to get them delivered to your home. That was unheard of for snacks. They're eating that, and they were bawling like you couldn't believe. They were both sitting in front of our 23-inch. Uh, God, you're like a millennial, so you probably only maybe have seen pictures of this. It was a console TV, and it's made out of this wood thing. It was friggin' huge. It was tubes, if anybody remembers that. The older generation would. And they're like a foot from the screen, bawling and crying their eyes out. I've never seen my mom and my sister cry as hard as they were about the end of this movie. And I didn't get it. And that was my introduction to Robert Redford. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, yeah. Yep, yep. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about then. Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, Robert Redford was the guy that I've seen him in some movies. We're going to talk a little bit about some tonight. He's in transit. He's wanting to make this, being Robert Redford's birthday, so we're going to see if he pops in. He's a Redford fan. I could sit there and say I don't know if I would call myself a fan of Robert Redford, but I don't dislike him. And in a certain way, to me, he's like Clint Eastwood in a way where you may not like the movie or the subject matter, but he's usually good in it, whether he's writing it or producing it, acting in it. Let's just say acting for what we're talking about. So whenever he comes out with a movie, I have a tendency to want to like it. Eric Breen is like saying that he can only hear me. Let me check and see what we've got here in our settings. How clear am I, Eric? Okay, go ahead and say something, Doctor. We'll see in 30 seconds if Eric hears you. Okay, so we'll give that a shot, see if he hears that. Yeah, so for
Yeah,
Robert
you're
Redford, to me, he makes good films, and he's smart about it. He does have a natural presence. He is, damn it, I hate to say it, because he almost doesn't seem egotistical on screen. He's a good-looking, handsome, charming man, and damn it, it took me to get to be an older man and see a bunch of his films and see him actually age in front of my eyes because I didn't see him in his prime actually do that. So I'm
but
crystal clear. Go ahead and say something else again.
Eric, I'm coming to get you.
That sounded different actually. It sounded a lot clearer and more masculine from my end. Oh, so I guess he can hear you now. Okay, I don't know what was going on there. Maybe I was talking too fast. Yeah, Eric, there's about a 30-second delay. So we noticed that with some clips going too fast or scene transitions, you would see that. So that might be something. So Robert Redford tonight, obviously you know the title. I'm sure you're familiar with his films. The first one I kind of wanted to talk about was actually, I haven't seen any of the more recent ones he's done recently, but he saw one that I went, man, this guy's got it. And I think he's aged well, even though he's very old now. But at the time, he's in his 60s. But he was very mature about the way he presented himself physically and the way he dressed. And that's in a movie called Spy Game that has Brad Pitt in it. Did you see this?
Yes, 2001 or 2002.
Right around then. Yep.
That yeah, right around when I watched the movie In Hell, which we just reviewed with Jean-Claude Van Damme. But yeah, no, I watched it. I remember like yeah, that was this guy. He always has whenever he's on, whatever what role he's playing, he has the distinguished like voice. He's kind of like a Charlton Heston in that point. Me, that's the way I describe him. He's the pretty boy, but he's also got that the manliness like Charlton Heston.
Yeah, and he was Charlton Heston was the guy that I was thinking of comparing Robert Redford to in that they're icons. I mean, Charlton Heston is to me is the icon. He goes back a lot farther than Robert Redford, but Robert Redford, he's an artist at heart. He's a painter. He does lots of things. He's acted on Broadway. He's done all sorts of stuff, but he's what I would call an old school actor. And for him to be as successful as he has, and he has that presence, it, when I think of an action star, we can talk about John Claude Van Damme like we just did. We talk about this type of star, whatever. Robert Redford is just an actor, and he's a leading man. I've bemoaned the lack of what I would call leading men in a lot of today's films, other than the ones that like
I,
Engleton will cover with us on this show here, but even on I Love Comics, his really famous comic book channel. It's one of those things where he just plays an authority figure that's very mature, very calm, very patient, and he does it so well, it's so believable. I think that's one of the pluses he has.
yeah, I mean this guy is like I said, he's you're never gonna find an actor like quite like his um let's say it's a popularity or just caliber. I mean, look at today's actors. I look at back at Robert Redford and all these others, Robert Vaughn. You're never gonna find actors with that caliber these days. The movies they're making are just crap. I mean, so if you want to see good movies, you go back and you watch Robert Redford movies. You watch Clint Eastwood movies because it's depressing what's coming out today. Everything is recycled. And there's no emotion to it. There's no great acting. So
And not knowing Redford's full catalog, and I've seen a handful of films over the years. I remember when The Last Castle came out, roughly around the same time, about 20 years ago, when Spy Game came out. He plays a guy that I think he's like a military disgraced figure or something, whatever, just like a bad accident, something, whatever. He ends up in like the military prison, and James Gandolfini's like the bad dude, and he was had a good run on The Sopranos at the time, I believe. Was like the bad prison ward trying to break him, and kind of like what we talked about in Hell, where JCVD gets hanged, and everybody decides to not fight, and they see this show of solidarity of strength from his character. You see that in the real famous scene in this movie in The Last Castle is Robert Redford. They say, hey, you need to take this pile of rocks and move it from this point of the yard to the other part. And he spends all day doing it. And he's an old guy. He takes his shirt off, and you see that he's old. And I appreciate the fact that he's mature about the fact that his body's not what it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. But he takes his shirt off, he gets to
Mm-hmm.
work, and everybody watches him. And then at the end, the great line was, okay, now I want you to take him and move them all back to where it started, and he does it again. But that's what kind of got everybody working for him, because he was a natural leader and he didn't want to lead people, but he ended up doing it, and it just was by the strength of his character. And I think that whether you like him personally with his politics or anything else about him, he has a vision for what he likes to do. He's very consistent with it, and as long as you know where somebody's coming from, what they're about, I could say the same thing about Tom Cruise. You know what to expect, and that's one thing I think Robert Redford really has about him, and that's the quality I would call of professionalism. I think the guy's just straight up
I,
legit.
the best way to describe him, I would. This guy has the cool, calm, the manner, kind of like Paul Logan did, or not Paul Logan. I'm sorry, wrong one. What's the other guy's?
Paul Newman?
Paul Newman. Yeah, I don't know why I brought up Paul Logan.
I don't
Crocodile
either.
Dundee.
Get rid of this Logan guy. Come on.
No, but
I don't think
yeah,
Robert Redford was bisexual like Paul Newman and a lot of the old people that they didn't
no,
want to
no,
let that out. I mean, I think it's legit. So Paul
no.
actually
But
was
I'm
sweet.
saying he has that suave demeanor. Like, it's like this is the guy. He like you watch him in Marvel movies. He was in Captain America, Civil War. I believe he's in there. No, was he? Well, one of the two. He no, it was Winter Soldier. That's what it was. He was in Winter Soldier, and he played basically like a senator or a director, or whatever it was
An
for
authority
Shield,
figure.
and yeah, authority figure basically. And he's telling Captain America, well, this is what you need to do. This guy's do this, and then you find out that this guy is actually a Hydra agent. He's actually an evil son of a bitch,
Oh, really?
and he's yeah, he plays a villain. I mean, this because as I said, he has the demeanor to play either a nice guy, a good guy, you know, or he can play a villain. He doesn't. He's not like Rutger Hauer where he goes like crazy like that. No, he's the one that's the calm calculator. Like, hey, like it's like I have this all worked out. You know, you're with us or you're not with us.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? We might as well just go ahead and just bring it up, because I got to tell you, way back in the day, I went into theater and I saw it with somebody at the time. And I remember at the end of the movie being extremely upset at Indecent Proposal, going, this is effing stupid. This is absolutely dumb. Of course, I'm a young man in a theater with, my lady at the time, and I look around, and all these friggin' women are crying, and all these guys are looking around looking at each other like, what the hell? I don't get it. So, Indecent Proposal, Robert Redford comes on, and he's such a smooth bastard. He's a rich guy. It's a little different than the novel, of course. It's moviefied, but basically he's I'll pay you $1 million to sleep with your wife. But he does it in such a way that you're like, fuck, this guy's slick. This guy's good. He's
Mm-hmm.
he's the man. Like he's so there's not like a whiff of arrogance in him. He's just very humbly self-confident, and it comes across the more you're watching him perform. It's like he shows up on a scene, says his lines, you're like, yeah, whatever. But then as they're playing pool and all that, and then he makes the proposition, and then he kind of backs off, like, okay, or whatever. Then he start talking about it, and the best scene in the movie to me is where after a while, Woody Harrelson, who plays the husband in there, they've got the $1 million, they're doing whatever, he just can't get out of his head that she spent the night with somebody else, and they had the lawyers draw it up and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
what I didn't like was how they kind of made Robert Redford almost try to like chase her a little bit, which I think was stupid. Yeah, a guy like that would have
Yeah,
any of them, but they didn't need that. But the best thing was
he didn't
Woody
want to let her
Harrelson.
go.
No, Woody Harrelson
Yeah,
was like, I just have to know. I'm sorry, but I gotta know, how was he? Like, you're comparing yourself to another man. That's the worst thing you do as a guy, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
and, and she starts breaking down, and she starts crying. And she goes, he was good. He was really good. Something like that. And it's like, oh,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, he's
I know.
he's not a jackrabbit. He's not anything.
Yeah,
I'm like,
this
oh, you got Robert Redford there, bro.
and this you thought this movie was bad with this movie, like the book was like 10 times more horrible, and like where the guy actually recorded it and showed the guy the tape. So and so he's seeing his wife like enjoying herself and like you going down on the guy. It's like, oh, it's like if that would have been the movie, oh man, Hollywood would have flipped out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It it gave me. But see, here's the thing. You know, women hit the wall, then whatever happens, you can say that about in real life or in Hollywood. But of course, youth and beauty and all that as the way it's portrayed on screen is a big deal, especially now today. Things are so much more sexualized than they were before. I would suggest that, you know, Sade, the type of music that would be present back then, you don't really have today. It was very adult, mature kind of romantic music as opposed to crap that's out now in a film. But with Robert Redford, when I saw his character, and I said, man, that gives me something to look up forward to as being an older gentleman. I can be cool, I can be sophisticated. I'm not going to be the 2 minute pump and dump kind of guy as a 20-year-old jackrabbit in bed. I can woo a woman off her feet and all that. This guy's got class. And that's why I didn't like him, you
Mhm.
know, looking like he was showing up and chasing after her and sending her flowers and all that other kind of stuff. I just looked at it as, oh, he was fucking with her and fucking with the husband for being such a simp, letting him sleep for it. Because this movie was way ahead of its time when it came to that stuff. Because, yeah, it's that age old joke, you know. Hey, would you sleep with me if I paid you 10 cents?
Oh,
No. What if I gave you $1 million? Well, maybe. Well, we know you're a whore. We're just negotiating the price. He owns it. And he does not seem like he's slimy while he's doing it. That's how friggin' good he is.
yep. He makes the husband about to be at the jerk.
Yeah. And it's true. And from an older person's perspective, it's like, that's true. It's like, hey, you know, it's like he could have said to Demi, look, I may not have the body he has. I may not be as young as he is. But, you know, who really brought it to you
Yeah,
in bed? You
this
know,
guy,
who gave you what
this
you
guy,
don't normally get, huh? Who's the man? You
this
know,
guy.
he doesn't have
I
to
was
say it
just
though.
Robert Redford. Like you think about his actor. You know, he was born in 1936,
Yeah.
so he grew up with like like his family was probably, I don't know if they're well off in the depression or not. But I mean, this guy had seen a lot of stuff. And he went through the whole Kennedy assassination stuff and all. So this guy has like he's not brought up with the like what you call like being raised where like basically the perfect example, millennials, they're brought up with tablets. Even the generations after that, they're spoiled. Where he got that harsh sense of reality where, hey, if you want to make yourself like if you want to get ahead in life, it's up to you, no one else. You do it yourself. You can't rely on anybody else.
And I think that's a really good point here too, because back then, you know, that self responsibility and individualism is really important. So the thing is, be a professional at your craft. No matter what your craft is, do the best job you can at it, learn what you can. And of course, the studio system was different back in the day. I'm sure England team would be able to espouse on that a lot better than I could. I definitely agree. Um, I love the way Robert Redford dresses. He matches his clothes. I know we like to talk fashion a little bit, especially with members only jackets when we were doing our Chuck Norris and other things, and you talk cars. But he's a man's man. He wears the right stuff that fits him well, but it's not ostentatious or in your face. It's nothing silly. I mean, there's a way to look mature, masculine, and good looking without, you know, looking flashy. And there's a huge difference, which in the '90s really got to be a lot popular with the ghetto look. I'm looking at channel here and martial arts makers saying. Remember Kingpin? They relieved that scene. Yeah, they did. You know, I'll pay you
You
a
know,
million dollars to sleep with your friend, and they're rolling around in it. But here's the thing: martial arts master said gear-like, meaning Richard Gere. Absolutely 100% agreed. Now, I don't know if Richard Gere himself in real life is bisexual. He's married to Cindy Crawford, who was one of my crushes growing up. Could be a cover, who knows. Richard Gere's got a little bit more of that effeminate kind of pretty thing to him, but I really do love Richard Gere as an actor. He does remind me a lot of, you know, Robert Redford as far as a leading man. I think Redford's got a bit more natural masculinity to him. I know likes the outdoors a lot. That's a big thing for him. Obviously, you know, the sun caught up with him as he's gotten older, but
I mean,
he's got a mature class about him. And being a
he's
liberal back when Robert Redford's days is different than being a liberal growing up
yes.
these days. So I agree with everybody, with everybody's what you're saying, what Marshall's saying, what everybody's saying.
I mean, he had a lot of people don't realize like he had a son that died of infant death syndrome at age 2.5 months and buried. And she's buried in Provo City Cemetery in Provo, Utah. So this guy has experienced loss.
Yes.
And he graduated in 1954 out of high school. Then he went into college and he became an alcoholic. Was kicked off for because of excessive drinking. And then he traveled to Europe and stuff in Italy and took classes on painting and all that stuff. And then, yeah, he came back and he met this girl and she dropped out of college and they had 4 kids. So, I mean, he had an interesting life.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not where he's like, oh, again, I dropped out of college, I became a YouTube star.
Well, he paid the price, to be successful. He seems like it hasn't totally gone to his head. He's had a vision for what he wants to do with expanding arts. That's his passion with the Sundance Festival. He fell in love with Utah. He would talk about, buying more acreage and putting things together. And he's an environmentalist, which in his mind, I think it might be slightly different than the wackos that are out there today. But bottom
Yeah,
line, as far as films go, I think he's that kind of person, like I say, like Clint Eastwood. He's earned the pedigree where, like, I would watch a film with him in it just because he's in it. He's earned that for me, whether I like his
right.
politics or not. Same thing with probably with Richard Gere, definitely with Charlton Heston. I can't say it about a lot of people. Tom Cruise has, as far as a modern example, but to me, Robert Redford, he was the first guy I said, man, I don't get it. Yeah, I guess he's handsome. He looks all right. And it took me a while to warm up to him. But for me, what I wanted to talk about, for me, the first movie I saw him in that made me go, okay, I'll pay attention to him was The Natural. And I'm not a baseball guy. You know this. We talked about this in our best movies. I think this was 84. And I think Eric Breen mentioned that he really liked that a lot. Martial Arts Master, I don't
But
think he draft dodged. He was too old for that at the time, actually.
yeah, I mean, he's actually, I believe he's 83 today.
Yeah,
That's his,
83. Now, my
yeah.
mom's roughly around the same age, and when The Natural came on HBO back in the day, she went to watch it, and this is about the same time that I mentioned that she was crying with my sister watching the way we were, and she's like, "Oh, you've got to watch this, Rob. You got to watch this. Why? Robert Redford's in it." I'm like, it hit me. You know what I said to my mom? I said, "Mom, be honest with me." She goes, "What?" I said, "Did you name me after Robert Redford?" And she looked at me and she just laughed. And to this day, she will not answer me. And my father's not with us anymore because I've always wanted to ask him, "Hey, was I named after him?" I'm not sure. So I have a personal fight in this. But damn it, the guy won me over. And in a natural, I can't watch baseball, but he was good in the movie. And as a
I
kid,
mean,
I'm watching an adult slow drama about a sport I don't care about. I'm like,
yep.
wow. So he must have had something. That's when I first noticed him. Which movie was it for you?
The Natural, but then I went back to watch Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids. I was watching in the '90s. I was going back to the martial arts stuff, but before that, I was trying to watch like tried to like the movies from like the '60s and '70s. I was watching the Clint Eastwood movies, so then I got like the Western stuff, and then I like, wait, Robert Redford's in this. So then I watched it. It was good. It had a sad ending.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, I was watching Young Guns around that time. So then I watched that movie, the Butch Cassidy. That was people were saying, "Oh, it's such a great movie. It's won so many awards and all this stuff." It's like you need to watch this. And like it's Robert Redford's defining moment. And it's like, so yeah, it actually was surprisingly good. A lot of times you watch old Western movies and it's just like they're really slow and like okay, I'd rather just go out and just do something else. But that movie held my attention.
Hmm.
It wasn't just because of him, because he had who was his part in
Paul
the movie with
Newman.
him? Paul Newman. Yeah, see, so you had two guys who are great at acting playing off each other. I wonder how much that when they're talking, they're sitting behind the rock, but they're both dying. I wonder how much of it was actually ad lib. I always wonder that.
He would know. I couldn't tell you. I saw it, but it wasn't one of those things that just knocked
Oh,
me over. I was a kid,
yeah.
so I might like it better as an adult. But I think you're bringing up an interesting point because you're obviously noticeably younger, and I think some of our audience are that way too. But I went through a phase where I would get hooked on an actor or actress, and I'd want to be
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, let me watch them. Or it just seemed like at the time renting a movie from Blockbuster, or the local home, mom and pop video store, I'd be like, well, they have nothing but Charlton Heston films. Okay, next week I'll get another one, or I'll get a third one, or I can't
Yep.
find one. Let me just pick one up. And Robert Redford was somebody I always said, oh, I'll go back and watch more of it. And over the years, I've seen a few more films of him, but I tell you, he had like a mini renaissance, like I say, about 20 years ago with Spy Game and The Last Castle. And he's acted in a few things recently. The one on the boat I had watched and thought that was really good, where he doesn't really talk too much. He's kind of like lost at sea, and I think he's a big time boater, fisherman like type in real life. I know he loves the outdoors. So I thought, man, here's a guy that just, as soon as the movie started watching, I'm like, oh, it's going to be one of the slow ones that I like watching. Here we go. But there was another one, something with Nick Nolte in it. What was that? A Walk in the Woods?
Walk in the Woods. Yes, he's our Robert Redford plays our writer. He's only up in his age. It's just his movie came out in 2015. So yeah, he's in his late 70s, and he's like he feels like he just feels doesn't feel inspired to write anymore. He was a famous book author, and he's seen everybody else and seen all his daughters in the movie, how she's getting married and all that stuff, and the people she's with, and he doesn't want to be old. The whole thing is that he feels like he's an old person. He got because he went and he's like, I want to do something. So he wants to go trail. None of his friends or his colleagues, they just laughed at him. I'm busy. I'm busy. The only person who's not busy is Nick Nolte. And of course, Nick Nolte has to play the flat, overweight, drunk, and he likes smoking and he's foul mouth. The one that his wife hates. So this is like a almost like you're watching John Candy and Steve Martin going somewhere. And if they went to walk in the woods,
Oh, like
this is
Last Chance
basically
Automobile. Yeah.
this is kind of like they like he finds him annoying, but then he finds out the reason like why the guy is he's depressed and all stuff. He never really took the time to talk to the guy. He always looked at the guy as a slob, so he didn't really know nothing to do with him. The guy was a cheat.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's a scene in the beginning where they decide to go to the store and like this guy's trying to sell Rob Redford. He's like, hey, you need this and this and this, and he's like the guy's probably like in his 20s. He saw him like, oh, you're going on the woods, So this is the I believe they're on the Appalachian Trail.
I
I think
think
it is.
so. Yeah, that's the big
I
hiking
think
one. Yeah.
yeah. So and the guy's kind of like thinks he's like, hey, this old guy, I'm just gonna swindle him. I'm gonna sell him everything there is. He's like at a Gander Mountain or something like that. And Robert Redford just kind of looks at him and he's like, dude, no, I just need this, 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 you know. And he gets out of there. So then they're on the trail. Those two are walking on, and they just got out of their cars. They're walking up there, and by the time they get up this little bitty hill, maybe like from your house, your door to your mailbox,
Mm-hmm.
not that long. They're already out of breath, and they're bending over. And he's like, and because they're carrying all their luggage on their back, all their gear, and these little kids run up and he's like, "Yeah, you little shits, I hate them, all full of energy." so as they go through, they're camping there, and Nick Nolte, like he's drinking something out of a flask. You assume he's drinking alcohol this whole entire movie because he's a drunk alcoholic. So you'll be surprised about his character if you watch at the end of the movie what happened. I'm not gonna spoil it for you. I'm just
Okay.
gonna say you're gonna just by looks, you assume that someone is the way they are. You find out that they're actually totally different. So, and they become best friends towards the end because they have like a real adventure. But as they're going through, they're walking this up, and Nick Nolte's character, he's like, "Screw this shit! I'm too old for this crap. Let's go get a motel. I ain't gonna camp in the woods. It's too damn cold."
Right.
And they go in a motel, and while Nick Nolte goes to the laundromat, he wants to go wash his clothes. He comes across this woman here, and she's like flirting with him, and all this woman is not by means. This woman is not like someone like you'd want to sleep with. She's overweight, and obviously, and she's holding up a big pair of panties.
Oh, but
I mean,
she's giving Nick Nolte the vibe. I gotcha.
yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
Nick Nolte's like, he's a pervert. He don't care. He's like, wait, those are nice panties. Like, here, I believe it's yours, and I'll get. So then they end up hooking up off scene. And then so they're back in the motel room. Robert comes back there and he's like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh," and he hears a car pull up, and then all of a sudden he hears a guy. He's like, "Yeah, you son of a bitch!" And he's like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you." Slept with my wife. And he's like, and Robert's like, "What the hell's going on?" And it's like they had escaped through the bathroom window just to get out because this guy's got kind of he's gonna kick both their asses.
Uh-huh.
So so they're back in the woods and they're and they come across these two like guys who are like in their 30s, like probably in their late 20s, and they're like He's like, here you go, guys. Like they're trying to show him tips. Here, if you do this, and like they're basically like, go away. We got this. We can do what we want. We're fine. We're. You guys are stupid. You're young. We know what we're doing. And they end up going off path, and they end up falling down onto like side of this cliff. And while they're like, oh crap, we can't get back up. And then they ran out of water there because no one's coming through. And somebody starts. These kids are there. Start peeing off the side of the wall, and it goes on to like they get their raincoats on, so it goes on to them obviously. Eventually, those two guys that they yelled at, they had to leave them alone, are the two guys that save them, help them get up. And so yeah, he calls his wife and all, and like he's like, and she's because the whole time she wanted him, she didn't want him to go, she didn't want Redford to go. She wanted him to stay home because she like she's like, you're man enough for me. You don't need you're not old. You're still good.
Mhm.
So and they make up, and these two end up becoming best friends. And you find, and so I'm not gonna tell you anymore, but
Okay.
I definitely, it's a comedy movie. You should watch it. It's good, and it's a serious, but it's got comedy moments in it.
Yeah, and Redford's really good in those kind of roles. Some of the silly comedies of like the '50s and all that stuff, the romantic ones are just kind of dopey to me, and I just can't really watch them too much. I mean, but guys doing something at any age is pretty interesting. And you know what? That's one thing about Robert Redford that, in all seriousness, I wanted to mention is that he's the original Brad Pitt. I mean, you could talk about Brad Pitt looking great, even though he's 150, 160, soaking wet and all that too. But he has a look and all that. But and he's might act sometimes, might not. Who knows? Whatever. The original one for all this, the original hunk to me, even though there's some macho guys, it was Robert Redford. I've got to agree with my parents on that, especially my mom, who just to this day glows when she talks about him and the way he would act and the impression he laid on people. And that was the really amazing thing to me is you talk with older people about the impact that he had, and it's like yeah, he was that guy. It's like when we're old men and we talk to young people about, oh, that guy Tom Cruise is a little weird, but man, made a lot of really good movies. You can't deny that. It's hard to explain unless you experienced it, and so I don't know even the full effect. But the thing I want to talk about with Robert Redford was his age. Obviously, Hollywood likes young people, and especially now they like him younger and weirder. But as a white male, watching him age gracefully and transition into certain roles like authoritarian figures that he was able to do, I think is great. I think it's tough when a lot of actors and especially actresses who bemoan the fact that they have to look young because after a certain age they can't get roles anymore. There really is a lack of those kind of older, more mature films, and except for the occasional one you might see like on Netflix or a specialty type thing, you really don't get to see that, and I think it really leaves a lot of things blank. And this is where we talk about growing up with film, where it was considered more of an art with the script, and even though it was a product, the approach to it from the industry, from the actors, actresses, where you'd actually have to work hard at and do everything. I think it's different today, product wise, and where most everything's a tentpole. To your point, everything's remade. There's not a lot of original things out there. I think it's hard if you were young today to kind of understand what it was like. And so I think someone like Robert Redford, who's been successful, can go, I'm gonna pick and choose and be a little more specific about what I'm going to be involved with has only helped him. And that doesn't mean that he's the best choice because people like, oh gosh, Jim Carrey, for example, love him. He does phenomenal work, but the more he talks and runs his mouth, the more legitimate crazy you think he is on stuff. And you go, man, make another Ace Ventura and then go away. I mean, because now it's like, you know, it doesn't seem like they can handle it, when they get a lot of success. Whereas someone like Robert Redford, that seemed like he wasn't necessarily an instant success. He worked his way up the chain. He was able to handle just as much as he could at each time. It wasn't like dumped on him and now he's a crazy person and burned out like a lot of young people are. So I do appreciate that about him. That may not be true, but at least that's the impression that he's cultivated that I, in my cynical middle-aged mind, want to sit there and say I appreciate seeing that in him. He'll do an old movie with Walking with Nick Nolte. How many of those are out there? And it'll still be good. It won't just be completely dopey.
Yeah,
So Robert Redford is worth watching, definitely.
yeah. You remember he was inside Daisy Clover, the movie 1965. He actually played a bisexual movie star who marries starlet Natalie Wood. Yeah,
Yeah, there were a lot of old
So
time
he had to,
actors that were their leading men that were, in a closet and they couldn't come out, so they went to great
yeah,
lengths to do them. Or bisexual guys. Newman was supposedly
yeah.
one of them, a
So
few others. I've not
so
heard anything about Redford though.
yeah, Redford. No, I'm just saying Redford. Yeah, Redford played that actual bisexual character, and that was like back in 1965.
Yeah, it was kind of a
So I
big
mean,
deal. Yeah.
yeah, you really didn't hear anything like that. If you did, it was like really like independent movies. There were it's just like the ones your mom's like, oh, you can't watch this rubbish. It's crap. Back in that day. But
Well, you saw Endgame, the Avengers. I haven't. So let me ask you, how good was he in that movie? Seriously,
in Endgame, you
compared to
could
the other
tell
actors.
well, he reprised his role. It's supposed to be a flashback when they went back in time to go back 5 years back, and it's supposed to be like when he did Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Right.
So I mean, he had a small scene in Endgame, as where Winter Soldier. That was 2012, I think. I'm not sure. I might be wrong, but I mean, he was pretty good in it. I mean, he still comes off as that guy who can suave. He's like the you can tell he's a villain right away. I mean, just his hand movements, the way he talks. He's like he basically talks like if you be like a politician. You get that vibe. That slimy guy. But he was no, he didn't stutter his words. He was able to walk. He wasn't shaking. Like he was ready to fall over. He's. I mean, the guy's. That movie came out. Was it this year? No, was it this year? Endgame. Yeah, I think it was this year. Yeah,
Yeah, in the spring.
yeah, yeah. I'm getting confused with Infinity. But yeah.
It puts him in front of a whole new audience and all that too. But yeah, just for me, I think he's a fantastic actor. I do like him. I do watch him. He's somebody in the back of my mind. I go, man, he's got a couple films that I need to go see that I haven't. I don't really care to see Endgame, honestly. It's no surprise to you, I know. But just being able to know that he's got a bunch of things in his catalog, I go, you know what? I'm in the mood to see a movie. Oh, nothing good on. Oh, what about Robert Redford? Maybe I'm in the mood to watch a drama,
uh,
or Charlton Heston. Maybe watch a big budget type thing.
did you ever watch The Chase with him and Marlon Brando and Jane Fonda?
Way back in the day, yes, I did see
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's only the more recent stuff of his that I've seen, but yeah, I think it's rare because a lot of times people say, "Oh, the person that's leading man of this," or somebody gets named to a franchise, and it's like all of a sudden they have supposedly instant credibility, which that's the stuff I hate the most. Whereas Robert Redford, like I say, he's had that Clint Eastwood kind of career where he can pick and choose what he wants to do. He usually makes good decisions about it, and usually only make good decisions because one, you know who you are, and two, you've probably made a few bad ones, so you kind of auto and course correct, and it's not like he's hurting for money or anything. And he definitely is a passionate individual that has some big interests, the outdoors, arts, stuff that I like a lot too. Politics may be different on certain things, but he's the type of person you think if you sit down and have a conversation with him, he could explain to you where his background's coming from, why he believes what he believes, where he would disagree. He seems like he'd be very calm and patient about it without getting too wound up. So bottom line is, it's kind of like what we've been doing all along here. I'd say he would give you the extreme treatment, and that's a play on people that get triggered these days, saying, "Well, this is great. Well, this sucks. Well, tell me why." And they can't even do that and have a basic conversation anymore. And Robert Redford's one of those guys that even if I totally disagree with him and everything, I still feel like I could sit down and have a good conversation with him. Some in the Gimp. The Gimp will not be here, Jay. I just got a note from him. He's got family things he's taking care of. He's having to transport them and whatnot, so he's in transit. But he really wanted to get on. He really wanted to do Robert Redford. We did too, so that's why we're covering it. Paul Newman was better.
I'd say they're equal.
I gotta say, I think Paul Newman. I don't. I think Paul Newman had a different intensity about him that may seem that way. Like I think his passion bubbled up to the surface a bit more, at least in some of the roles I'm thinking of. And Martial Arts, the one I'm thinking about is Color of Money, which is one of my top
Yeah,
10
yeah.
films of the 80s. We talked about, I think it was my number one or two film for 1987 when it came out with Tom Cruise. Man, he's good in that. I don't know if I've seen as much Newman as I have Redford, so I don't want to misjudge it, but still.
Newman was in a Cool Hand Luke.
Yep,
You remember that one?
yep.
I mean, that and like you can say The Color of Money are like the two movies I think of when I think of Paul Newman. I mean, like he was in Harper.
Yeah,
I think it was called.
yeah.
Yeah,
Let's not forget the movie we covered a while back briefly. When we were talking about hidden gems on Netflix. It was on playing at the time. I'm not sure if it's on right now. But Sneakers with Sidney Poitier, another classy individual.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, really
So I
good
mean,
film
yeah,
too.
Newman had his good movies. Um, Robert Redford has his good movies too. Majority of his movies that he made though were back well in the 60s, the 70s, and 80s. This guy by he really didn't do. I know he did some stuff. I mean, his more notable movies. People, if you grew up with him, you're gonna remember him from the 80s. You're gonna say, "Hey, Robert Redford." Well, Natural. That's the first thing I would think you'd say if you're a really big sports fan like Eric Breen.
Yep, yep.
You know,
And
I
it's
mean,
interesting because not being a baseball fan, it's hard for me to sit there and say, well, how realistic is some of that and everything. Actually, my very first job, I did work in a with a baseball team, and that's no exaggeration. So I fondly remember those days, but that doesn't mean I know anything about baseball. Just being around those kind of people. But like I say, Robert Redford, he's the kind of guy that, as dumb as some of the movies may be, if you think about him, like with a lot of people, he's the kind of guy that you watch for him. You don't care what the movie is. You really honestly don't care what it's about, and that's kind of the whole art thing to it. It's just a vehicle for them to do what they do. So in a lighthearted way, we've been talking about how much fun we've had watching JCVD movies or Seagulls and the things we like about them. And you know what? Finding the right fit for what you do is really all that we want. And someone like Robert Redford, he's got to play these kind of roles, and he's so good at doing it that he's one of these old school guys that, like, if I was ever an actor, and I wanted to pattern myself out of somebody, I would think I'd look at him and go, "Man, this guy just oozes charm, confidence, authoritarian without being overbearing or an asshole. Not quite smooth or slick, but just damn it, he's that guy in high school that you hear all these things about him for everybody, and you want to punch him in the face, but he treats you like
yeah,
somebody that you go like, damn, I can't hate the guy, and I hate to say
yeah.
it, but Robert Redford is that guy, and I've known very few of those people out there. So
He,
trust me, I'd want to find
yeah.
dirt on him if I can, but I haven't been able to.
Like I said, he'd probably be like you're in high school. He'd be like the I don't know, it's just like be the jock, but he'd be like the guy who basically is with all the girls surrounded. If they like him, he's suave, he's smooth talking, he does funny jokes. You just and you if you're an outsider, you're like, man, this guy, like, I hate this guy, but he hasn't really done anything that he doesn't cheat anybody. He doesn't make fun of people.
Yeah,
He's not a jerk.
a
I
genuine
mean,
good guy. That makes me want to
he,
puke saying that.
yeah, he's the guy like he'd be the head of the debate team, or like he'd be the teachers like him because they think he's cute. That's the guy he'd be.
But he'd be a really
He
nice guy, and you'd be like,
Yeah, on top of
nothing's
that
wrong with
too.
the dude. Yeah, I'm like, damn.
And like you're like the girl you like likes him. He's like, damn it,
Or you're like, he's gay, right? He's gay, right? He did something weird.
he's got to
No,
be.
he's not.
No,
Well, he got such and such pregnant. No, he didn't. Well, they broke
no.
up. He must have been an asshole to her. No, not
You'd hear
really.
yeah, you'd hear rumors about him like after school, like, oh yeah, that guy was yeah. But and it turns out people just didn't know anything about him. He had maybe had a private life,
He cheated. No, he really does do his homework. It's like, damn it, you make me sick. You're too damn clean.
Yeah,
I don't trust people that are clean like that.
like he's that guy from like the movie Grease. He'd be like the rich boy. Like that's he's where even the greaser girls like him because he's a cute. It's where Danny wanted to, what what's his name wanted to be a prep.
Hmm.
That's kind of like he kind of the feeling you get. He's basically the guy you want to hate, but what is there to hate about him? If anything, most people are just jealous. They want to be like him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He is
But
his own man, and I really do respect that about him. And I'm sure when he passes, we'll hear lots of stuff. It'll be a big celebration,
oh,
everything too. But we definitely wanted to for
I
his
wonder
birthday
because
discuss his films because he's a great actor.
I wonder though. Every time a big celebrity like him like passes, like you're gonna hear stuff rumors like, oh, this guy was a racist. It's just like, I mean, are they gonna try to tarnish his career too? Like the people did the Stan Lee and other things. It's just every time a celebrity dies, whether if you're not big in Hollywood, you're not a good person. They try to tarnish you, even though
He's
he's not.
always been a liberal and behind all that stuff, so he'll get a pass. That doesn't mean
Yeah.
that the younger people won't just see him as the blue-eyed, blonde white boy,
Well,
nobody
yeah.
likes it, that sort of thing. I could see that with the young ones. That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Like they're gonna say like he was he was a sexist, or like that, a misogynist. No,
I
no,
can't imagine. The answer is probably Sinatra. I don't think it's Elvis, and I don't think it's Tom Jones as much as he'd be my dark horse. But Robert Redford might give Sinatra a chase for how many panties just dropped when he'd walk into a room.
right?
I mean, just because he's got that all-American quality. And again, he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's not a little pipsqueak. He was average,
And
for the size, but athletic. I
dude,
mean, he's that all-American guy. God, I hate saying that.
when Indecent Proposal came out, you wonder how many women were like thinking like, "Yeah, this guy's really hot." Like it's like like, yeah. At that time he was still he's probably like in his what 40s?
No,
No, he had
50s.
50s. No, but
But
he
he's
didn't look like
83
it.
now, and it's
Yeah,
2019.
50s. He didn't look it though.
Well, yeah, and like I say, he dresses well, and he doesn't overdo it. Here's the thing with him. You got your lady, and sometimes you just meet a guy, and you're like, yeah, this guy's a stud, and if my wife leaves me or my woman leaves me, you understand why, because of the physical aspect, whatever, or the money or some kind.
Hmm.
But then when you see somebody like Robert Redford, you're like, yeah, he's decent looking, but you're like, oh fuck, that fucker's got that charm. It's like, man, I can't compete
Man,
against that. It's like I'm
I
fucked.
dude, I always wanted him when he was younger. If they did a Batman movie with Keaton, I loved him to be Hush. Hush is a guy who's basically tried murdering his parents, but his Bruce Wayne's father ended up saving his mother. So then he ends up going to go away, sending away, and so he does. He gets so when he happens what sees what happens to Bruce Wayne, where his parents are die, and he gets money, he gets jealous, and he becomes like he basically this guy becomes like a Thomas Elliot becomes like a surgeon, like a world renowned surgeon. He can do everything. He basically he plots his revenge against Bruce Wayne. He figures out his identity and Batman stuff. I mean, this guy had he could be the evil millionaire or
He could be
surgeon.
the heel. I'd
Yeah,
like to
yeah.
see him be a heel again.
If
He does
if
it
they
really
would
good.
if they would have done something like that, would have been great. But I mean, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe he was busy doing other stuff, or he just. I, well, Hush came out. I think that series came out in the '90s, a comic book.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, but if they would have acted on it and actually done something with it, he would have been my perfect choice.
Yeah.
He has a look. He has like the evil version, like a Bruce Wayne look. You know?
Well, I do know that we're talking about him tonight and being his birthday and all that. Yeah, yeah, I was actually, going to take a look at his calendar and go, okay, maybe I'll go watch the movie you mentioned too, the walking one
Oh,
and the other one.
I bought that. I rarely buy movies on a whim,
Right.
but I end up seeing in the theater with my friend. We are like, well, what's this? I'm like, it looks pretty good. We are like, whatever, we'll watch this,
All right.
and it turned out to be amazing.
Yeah, and we're talking about quality here, and that's really what it comes down to. How great can a movie like In Hell with JCVD be? I mean, honestly, it's a video movie, so a lot of people don't think much of it. So it's all relative, I think. To Robert Redford would just destroy anybody he's on screen with today for the most part. I joke about somebody I tweeted about recently. An attractive young actress who was in a movie that was actually pretty decent called Child's Play, a reboot, which those don't normally go too well, Aubrey Plaza. And she's quirky and she's weird and she's different, but I think she's trolling all of us. I don't think she really is that kind of whatever. I just think she knows that that's how she comes across, so
Hmm.
more power to her. But as a quirky individual, I like that. That doesn't mean necessarily she's a great actress or not, so I don't know how long her star is going to burn. And a comment that Martial Arts made in channel here is that he wonders about young Brando too. Yeah, you could say the same thing about, say, you talk about young people that started off pretty good and did well, not just Brando, but Orson Welles. Super talent. We talked about him with Charlton Heston. I saw Heston at a speech one time talk about him and say, hey, he had a ton of talent. Um, but when you start off the gate hitting home runs, everyone, what more can you do? And with Brando, I just maybe he lost his own way. Maybe he gave in to excesses that Hollywood presents. I don't know, and then we don't know about that Robert. If they did, if it did, or he's got some sort of vice, I'm unaware of it, except for obviously alcohol. That makes him look old too, I imagine, with all the sun damage. But I really appreciate the fact that he's had a pretty solid output. A lot of films, a lot of acting, a lot of plays, the writing, directing. Horse Whisperer was a big thing. He just has the thing with the outdoors. I love it when somebody's able to live what they do and be able to show that. And I think that's pretty rare. Most of it's, okay, we're going to reboot this franchise. You're going to play this character, get behind a green screen. And it loses its authenticity to me. And that's one of my biggest gripes and complaints about a lot of these comic book movies is that while they may be entertaining and interesting, fundamentally, as I've gotten older, the more I want the human element even more. Now, I'm a huge sci fi fantasy kind of guy, but it has to come down to the human element where I want to almost somehow be able to at least relate to somebody that's a human and doesn't need powers to overcome a situation they're in. Or if they have a power, it needs to do something really weird. And that's where earlier we had talked about how a movie that did that in Brightburn was a little bit different. And I'm like, man, it's just you don't get to see those kind of movies these days. So I do find myself reaching for these old ones. So as we're wrapping kind of things up here a little bit too, any kind of final thoughts about Robert Redford in general, or just about aging actors, or any of that stuff? What do you got?
I'm gonna say this. I know he retired from acting, but he's coming to come back and do a show based on him where he's president. It's what I'm not sure if it's going to coming soon or if it's already came out, but I'll be sad when this guy passes away. I
Yeah,
mean, this guy is like, look at Clint Eastwood's almost dead.
yeah.
This guy is just gonna die maybe in the next 10 years or who knows. But I mean, man, when Hollywood starts losing its actual actors that can actually act, that's when Hollywood's gonna die. Because I mean, who's gonna go see movies? Do you think millennials are I mean, like, we grew up with this stuff, but a lot of these people, like even younger than me, they don't appreciate stuff. Um, the older actors, they don't they don't all they've known is like, oh, okay, we'll watch this if it has laughs in it, even though they're not funny. They don't appreciate the dramas. They don't appreciate just the time period and classics. They just don't really care at all. I don't. If anything, these are the people that are probably going to see watching the really woke stuff. If they're watching it, anyway.
Yeah, my
They're watching the crap movies. You said like comic book movies. I can understand some of these comic book movies are not good. It's like what's going the hero is great. He's like the beginning and all, and then the middle of it, oh something bad happens, and he's almost defeated, and he comes back at the end wins. That's the place of possible. All these comic book movies, and then when you start changing it, like especially like what they did with was it Captain Marvel? They just that movie like could have been a good movie if they would have chose a different actress and wouldn't have treated what they did with Nick Fury's eye, how they led up and all the other ones saying how he lost it, like everybody expected to be real cool. And no, it's Captain Marvel. Oh, it's a joke. We'll do this. It's supposed to be really funny. They'll love it. Her cat scratched his eye out. Really? I mean, but yet there are people who went and saw Captain Marvel, thought it was amazing.
well, quality and popularity I look as different things. One doesn't necessarily mean the other. And I noticed back then it was a film. And
Well,
then somewhere
if
along the
you're,
way, it became a movie. Then it became a blockbuster, and then it became a summer release, and now it's just a product.
I'm just saying, like, when you don't care about quality in movies, that's when movies start becoming crappier and crappier, and if you don't see these original time periods and see, hey, these actually are really good. Why is it? And you start asking questions. Why are we getting these crap movies when these movies were so great back then?
Well, I think here on the Extreme Movie Show, the overall thing that we like to do is talk about what we like, what we didn't like, but mostly what we enjoyed, what was entertaining to us, whether the quality is there or not. Sometimes we like to mark out a low
Yeah.
quality, so it's not unusual for us to talk about somebody like Robert Redford or Charlton Heston or Aubrey Plaza. So it kind of seems like it's all over the place, but for those of you that are newer listeners, if you notice, basically our flagship show is tonight, where we pick one particular topic out, or even do like a live commentary, which we've done recently. Plan to do one again here soon. We're trying to do different channels, and the show before this one was obviously the one where we do our action movies. And we chose some ones specifically out of the 80s to talk about, not just martial arts, but that's what the focus seems to be, but it's not quite just that. We also have a snacking it channel where we just start talking about food off the cuff one day and what were our favorite treats and what was it like going to see a movie with it. And that's been actually fairly popular in terms of our videos. I know that the authenticator Dalton is looking at reviewing the new Alton Brown food show coming out there too, because it's such a big thing. And we even have with Christy a talk about office supplies, and it's just amazing what people remember and stuff, and it's amazing how it all fits into a film. And I just, to me, I like being able to share it. It's what Anglington and I have been doing for almost 40 years together. The fact that we're able to do this online is fantastic, and we know there's an audience. But my biggest concern was him coming from a comic book channel, the I Love Comics, the extremely popular one. It's almost at 20,000 subscribers. Go check it out if you haven't. Is that I didn't know what to expect. I'm a noob when it comes to all this online stuff. I'm very old school. I don't see a lot of films, but boy, the films I see, I really like to talk about. So it's refreshing when someone like Eric Breen will talk about The Natural and certain things about it and his useless facts that he knows about some of it, or some like Martial Arts Master that's obviously amped up and just remembers a lot of this stuff here too. That's great. Who authenticates the authenticator? The authenticee, Eric. So I'm saying if you use those legalese type terms, there's one that does it and the one that receives it.
Yep.
Yeah. So glad I could answer that for you. But yeah, ultimately we're taking a look at the younger generation, not just millennials. But I think to your point, I think there's going to be a backlash with Generation Y or Z or whatever the hell they're called. And those are the
Yeah.
ones that I think are going back and saying, I don't know, but something's not right. Why do everybody love the 80s? And I know we've talked a lot about the 80s. We're not an 80s show only, but we've
Well,
done a lot. But the idea is that there's a reason why, and I think the 80s was the perfect decade for having your gratuitousness in films, like we talked about with Chuck Norris going over the top, pun intended, like Stallone did. But also you had very good solid films. You had somebody like Robert Redford acting in that as well. And so once you start getting to 90s, things just became very different. Not just the industry, but what the quality of the blockbusters that started getting huge in the 80s and franchises. I think it all changed. So I think the 80s was the peak time period for to capture all this.
it's just interesting though because in the '80s you were a teenager, middle school, maybe we going to high school, maybe around
Junior
there.
high school, not
Yeah.
middle, junior high. It's high school, but at the junior level.
Yes. But you look back in the '50s and some maybe watch maybe some of the '40s movies. You know, when you were there, you look back. Now, when I was growing up junior high around like the late '90s. I looked at all that stuff in the back in the '80s. I mean, people are always going to look back. They're going
Yes.
to look back at the movies, but I wonder how far they're going to look back if they've been indoctrinated. I mean, all this stuff that's going on there with they're seeing all everything media because you look you're raised a certain way. Maybe see people are raised in a more liberal home, but I mean, like when I see liberal, I'm not talking about like Robert Redford liberal. I'm talking about like way out of the ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
So these kids may not be exposed to it, you know, or even if you're raised in a certain home, like it's any setting. I don't care if you're liberal or Christian or whatever. Sometimes kids are sheltered and they don't really see this stuff. So then by the time they discover these movies, they're like, all of a sudden they're just flabbergasted. So you're always going to have people are always going to look back. It's just interesting that because a lot of us look back to the '80s, you look back to like maybe the '70s, '60s with Charlton Heston.
Well, I definitely went through a period of it,
Yeah.
absolutely, because a lot of those people were still around.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Marshall was saying that there's a definitely a cheese factor in the 80s, and you had to be there. That's true, and I talk about how one of the things I lament about the 80s was a little bit of the cheese factor. Now, some of it I like, some of it's acceptable, but you like what you like, and that's it. But I think
Oh.
today, the fact that everybody gets their media from all their different sources, or like say the phone, or instantly on Netflix or Amazon Prime, I think that somehow in their own way, people are going, wait a minute, I like this kind of sound that Stranger Things has, or it reminds me, or doesn't remind me. It's something. But when people start doing all these different things, whether it's music, movies, something on TV that they're watching or binge watching, or somebody's talking about, or their parents, they all realize that somehow it's like the 6 degrees of freedom where eventually you're going to end up it was from the 80s and not just the
Wasn't
generation today's making this stuff. It's the fact that people go, no, it was kind of cool and kind of hip and kind of fun and enjoyable. Everybody enjoyed the 80s who
yeah,
was in it.
'80s was all about having fun. That's all it was. Any movie you watch, like you're here there to have a good time. The music was great.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted just to have fun. there was a, like, they weren't like all serious like that. And all of a sudden it just started changing towards the '90s, and then and then you get to the early 2000s. The movies dramatically changed.
Yes.
They weren't, yeah, they weren't like, I mean, I know you don't like John Hughes, like certain of his films, like Hot Pursuit, but even Hot Pursuit was, I admit it was kind of cheesy, but the whole point was like he was trying to get the girl.
Yep.
That was now you don't see that in movies.
Nope.
You don't see like the guy Money Can't Buy Me Love. You don't see
Nope. You don't.
you don't no.
And back then, you never thought that stuff would go away. That's how things
Yeah,
have changed. But people would
yeah.
say the '70s are the big films, as far as being artistic and the best. Where I just say '80s is the best decade for all that in general. And yes, I am biased, but the business part of it
Plus,
is I would sit here and talk about Humphrey Bogart films because he's somebody that instantly when I was a kid I would watch with my father or we're planning on launching another show where we talk about horror movies and I want to cover the Hammer horror films from the '50s and see if we have an audience for that. I'm trying to figure out how to promote our channel over to people over in Britain and then over in the Europe region that might like it. But
yeah.
horror movies today aren't necessarily the same as before. But again, the extreme treatment is basically talking about why we liked them, why they were neat, and everything too. So there's definitely things that you can go back and look at. But I think people today are looking at stuff and going, "Wait a minute, Robert Redford, who's this old man? Oh, he was in this and this. Mom, Dad, what'd you think of this?" Or I should probably say, "Hey, single mom, and
Or
stepdad, what movie was he
look
in?" And people are like,
look
"Oh
at
yeah,
these
this guy was big."
look at these 11 and 12-year-olds. They're like, they saw Spider-Man Homecoming. They saw Michael Keaton, who's this guy? And then they go back, wait, he was Batman?
Yes.
Because we've so you're gonna have that, like, and I love that when I was like see my nephew or my nieces, and suddenly they clicks in their mind, like, wait, this person was in this and this, wow. Or sometimes I get from my niece, so she's like, oh, I don't want to go watch the original, it looks stupid, I want to watch the new one. That's And then I'm like, you were great, and then you said that, now you're back on my crap list.
Well, that's what we like to talk about here on the Extreme Movie Shows, what we liked about something and what we don't. I know we argue about it with E sometimes too about movies, and he's the list king. So our Top 10 Tuesday that we're going to be doing, for those of you who haven't heard, Top 10 Tuesdays, he presents a topic. We discuss it, and it's usually in the top 10 list. So we've been doing the top 10 films of each year of the 1980s from 80 to 89. Then we did a review of all our top 10 films of the entire 80s. We're taking a week off from doing a list similar to that, but in keeping with the top 10 '80s theme, we're going to be doing on Top 10 Tuesday our top 10 1980s television shows. And the rule is that the show had to start in the '80s. It could have been a one season show, it could have started in '89 and went to '95 or something. But top 10 '80s TV shows. And one of the interesting things when we talk about it is, God, there's a lot of stuff in the '80s that even though I watched a lot of TV in the '80s, I still haven't seen or said, man, I'm not going to watch that. But there's a lot I did, so it'll be interesting to see what we have to talk about. And I know on your Twitter you'd mentioned about some TV shows. I keep pushing T.J. Hooker for everybody, but still.
I know you do.
So
TJ
martial
Hooker had
arts
some good
masters,
scenes.
yeah, martial arts masters saying 1980 TV shows. No, any in the 1980s on Tuesday. Yeah. So if a show started in 1985 and went through
Yeah,
1988, that was an
it,
80s
it,
TV show. It has
it
to
has to
start.
start in the
Yeah.
'80s. It can't cross over. So Trips is not on the list.
Right, or something that started like in '79 doesn't
Yep.
count, like Fantasy Island that went through into the '80s. Like Fantasy Island a lot. A part of
Yep.
me almost wants to go back and rewatch some of these older ones because I go, there's nothing better on TV now. But
Like
still, it's a
like the movie.
combination, Marshall, of top and favorites. So like my top 10, I will argue why they're the best and why I like them, but he will sit there and say differently. Like his number one movie of '87 was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and he told us why. That's the extreme take. I may disagree with that violently, but that's his list. So that's what we talk about. So ultimately, we talk about what was entertaining, and you might like it. So if you have listened to some of the streams and some of the things we did, you might see the patterns of the things we like and everything. So if there's Asian, it's automatically going to get a +1 from Angleton. Period. So just know that. Um, Me, if it's got martial arts in it, it's probably going to get a +2, or bones breaking, or some ass kicking, because I
Oh,
always like that.
uh, the Legend of Kung Fu, that was in the '90s, right? With Dave Carradine.
That might have been '88 or '89 when they rebooted it and he
Yeah,
came on and had the other guy. Yeah, so you're gonna have to look that stuff up. But yeah, we encourage
yeah.
people to post their lists and all that too. So yeah, I'm
But
looking
yeah,
forward to that.
did you ever
Sledgehammer would
watch?
count. Yep.
Did you ever watch Idleman, the Tron ripoff series?
I think, but I'd have to go back and check. Hey,
Go
stop.
look at these one.
Go ahead. That was my dog barking. Sorry.
Oh, I thought you were talking to me. I was like, seriously? Tell me
Oh,
to shut up.
she's going crazy. She wants to play.
How dare you? No more treatment for you.
No, she's getting extreme. She needs to get walked. No, A Team is one that I'm going to bitch about. Marshall, I'm going to tell you that now because it's overrated. And when I go back and watch
Ah,
it, I watched
the,
it, but I have others. So we'll see how that goes.
I kind
Uh,
of like the A-Team. A-Team, I'll say this though. I love the when they went to the junker and they created all the stuff and they welded stuff and I was like, it's cool. It's like watching like what was it? Jesse James's Monster Garage.
you could always say it all started from the 80s. That's kind of like the thing. Robert
Yep.
Redford was the
Super.
original Brad Pitt, and he was before the 80s. I'm just saying.
Yep. Supercars. 80s.
So we like to remind everybody who's listening and will be listening to all that to obviously watch a film that we've talked about. Let us know something you've watched about, something you want us to cover. Let us know as well. Yes, Scarecrow, Mrs. King, your name and names. You could say that. Jake and the Fat Man, Miami Vice, Heart to Heart. I think might have. I don't know if that started in the 80s. That's close. Could have been 79, but I watched that. There's so many of them that
Man.
are out there.
But TJ Hooker, Heather Locklear, man.
I know. She was on
I
two
know
shows.
that.
She was on Dynasty at the same time,
And he had William Shatner.
and Adrian's
And
Minute,
he was
and lots of
acting.
violence.
He wasn't doing there's something. No, he wasn't doing that. He was acting normal.
We'll see about that. We got to see what gets traction though too. So, um, what do you want to remind everybody of, Doctor, as we close out?
I just want you guys to listen real closely and say, stay extreme.
Extreme.
Extreme!
Good night, everybody.